Welcome back. We're unpacking the recently unveiled federal budget, and joining me again is David Clement and Brock Stephenson. David, just before the commercial break, we were discussing how immigration levels, how they parlay into housing supply and availability and demand. Please pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and so we may make gains on supply through some of these policies that I think are tinkering at the margins. Some of that could be negated if we still have record immigration. I think immigration is great. It's great for this country. It's something we need. Brock mentioned about the labor force and shortages we have. But the two have to mirror each other in some realistic sense. And then at the same time, Ottawa is further fueling demand with policies like the tax-free first home savings account and changing the amortization period on first-time mortgages. Those, whether or not they're good policies, fuel demand and increase demand. And that puts even more pressure on the need to increase supply. And so it's nice that Ottawa has finally started to talk about supply. But there are a lot of demand issues here that I think go unaddressed.
Okay, well, let's shift gears now. One of the more controversial taxes to emerge from this budget was a tax hike on capital gains. So it's up from the current 50% to 2/3 for annual capital gains over $250,000. Brock, was this a smart proposition from the government?
They're trying to recoup some money so they can pay for all their new spending. They had almost 60 billion in new spending in the budget. Reports are that these changes to capital gains might bring in an extra 19 billion, so that's a third of it. Even the Toronto Star had a columnist say that it's the public policy equivalent of an exploding cigar. Shopify's upset about it. The tech industry in general is upset about it. Doctors, dentists, people that have their savings in their businesses are very concerned, as not everyone is a journalist or a school teacher and part of a union and has a pension. So some people have to plan their savings through working hard and having a business be valuable enough to sell when they're ready to retire. And I think that's something that's causing great trouble. David Dodge, the former central bank governor, said it was likely the worst budget in decades before it even came out. Turns out he may have been right.
My goodness, that's quite an alarming statement. David, do you echo these sentiments?
Yeah, what really grinds my gears here is the whole mantra of fairness for every generation, right? That's the tagline that the Liberals are giving their budget. I don't think it's particularly fair to continue to tack on debt and strap my generation of taxpayers with indefinite debt servicing payments in perpetuity. And then at the same time, when it comes to something like this capital gains change, the big question for me is, should the government be able to take 66% of anything? I'd argue probably not. And yes, we can try and Ottawa will try and frame this in the context of fairness and the rich paying their fair share. But as we've seen this conversation draw out over the last few weeks, we're talking about people who pour everything into a business and want to sell it when they retire. The government taking 66% of everything north of 250 is a considerable amount, and that changes the retirement decisions for a lot of entrepreneurs, for a lot of people who actively invest in growing Canadian businesses. Do you want to discourage that? Probably not, especially if we need a higher growth economy to dig ourselves out of this tax burden. You need to fuel growth, not try and dampen it. And that's where I think the major misstep is here, is that when you tax something like this, you obviously get less of it. Do we want less of that? I don't think so.
Well, I think you make a salient point. This is definitely a disincentive for those who are entrepreneurs and opening a business. Brock, do you think there will be a practical pushback to this, or people are just going to pack up their businesses and say, this is no longer a thing, we can't do this in this country any longer?
There's lots of people of my generation, particularly those without children, who are looking to move to the U.S. or other places abroad to have a more productive business career and make a good living for themselves and their future families. I think this is a problem Justin Trudeau's had since before he was prime minister. During the 2015 election campaign, he went out on CBC, spoke to Peter Mansbridge, and said that he thinks a large percentage of small businesses are just a way for wealthier Canadians to save on their taxes. He kept at it a couple of years later, talking about income trusts and how families divide their money. He is on a hunt to get more money to spend